And right now, you think about this division. And the Las Vegas Raiders started off last night. They won 27-11 over the Jacksonville Jaguars. But let's not take it seriously because none of the big-time players for either team played.
Never do.
Never do. No. And smart. Let them embrace the moment. Let them see what it's all about. Because some of those guys that played on that field, well, will eventually be in the Hall of Fame. Maybe a Devontae Adams. We'll see. According to him, also maybe a Derek Carr. But let's talk about this AFC, the wild AFC West that it's going to be. You look at all four of these teams, guys. All four of these teams, legitimate cases to make the playoffs and go even as far as a Super Bowl title. So the betting odds currently right now, Chiefs at a plus 175, Chargers at a plus 220, then followed by the Broncos at plus 275, and then the poor Las Vegas Raiders. Joe, I know me and you have been on this Raiders team, and I think this team's going to surprise some people. They're at a plus 600. So let me ask you guys this question. I'll start with you, Joe. Which AFC West team faces the most pressure? We're not going to talk about quarterbacks, but coming into the season, this is the division that everybody has been talking about and just can't wait to see how this all unfolds. And it starts in week one, just like it started or finished the regular season last year between those Las Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Chargers. But Joe, take it away. Who do you think?
It's got to be the Raiders. The Raiders went out. They got Devontae Adams. They went out and they got Chandler Jones to pair off with Max Crosby. They gave Max Crosby a ton of money. They gave Hunter Renfrow a ton of money. This is an all-in team. They got super close last year. You had the Gruden thing, the Ruggs thing, and now that's all done. Now you brought in some more talent. Let's be honest. The Chiefs are not the Chiefs from 2 or 3 years ago. Still a great team, don't get me wrong, and still probably the favorite in this division. But if the Raiders and Derek Carr are ever going to make their move, and Trev, we've been saying this for like 2 years, this has got to be it.
Yep.
There's some people that wish they'd moved on from Derek Carr. I, for one, think Derek Carr's the right guy. I think Devontae Adams is going to make him look like the superstar that he is. But they've got to get over that hump this year, especially when they're facing the Chiefs. Because to me, this is it. This is their big moment. It's all on Derek Carr and company to dethrone the Chiefs.
And Ted, Joe, glad you brought that up because every team in this has some sort of argument for pressure. The Chiefs, how is this team going to look with a new revamped offense without Tyreek Hill? Plus, they've kind of taken a step back. We all thought a couple years ago, Patrick Mahomes, MVP rookie season. I know it wasn't technically his rookie season, but it was his rookie season. Then he wins the MVP, goes to the AFC title game, loses to Brady. Then the following year wins a Super Bowl. And the next year they go to another Super Bowl, but they get defeated. Then last year they lose the AFC Championship. I know everybody's like, well, they've gone to the highest of highs. But we were all talking about a couple years ago that this Chiefs team, they're gonna run the NFC or they're gonna run the NFL, just like the Seattle Seahawks were going to. Just like all these teams over years that we've said they're going to run this conference and they're going to run the league. Well, we're still waiting to see if those Chiefs can continue. And then you look at the Chargers. They went out and made a lot of big moves, Ted. This is a team that everybody's their darling right now because Justin Herbert, well, to some, looks like he could be the favorite coming in to win an MVP. The Denver Broncos will get into. They go out and get their quarterback they've been missing. And then the Raiders. Ted, who do you think? Joe just said it's the Raiders. Who would you choose out of these four?
I'm surprised Joe went with the Raiders. I really am.
You know what? I'm surprised, Joe.
I'm going to use Joe's old argument against him. It's the Chargers. It's always been the Chargers.
Always been the Chargers?
And the reason why it's the Chargers is because for the last 20 seasons, we've been hearing the same story. They're the most talented team, similar to the Dallas Cowboys. They just can't win a Super Bowl. They can't get over the hump. Phil Rivers, LaDainian Tomlinson, God bless his soul. Oh, my God, Vincent Jackson, Antonio Gates. They had players galore.
Well, to be fair, Ted, everybody had to play against the Patriots. To be fair.
Listen, and guess what? Eli Manning and his team, who was probably maybe less talented, beat the Patriots not once but twice. Exactly. All right. That being said, it's easy. It's the Los Angeles Chargers, bro. The Raiders made the playoffs last year. Okay, they made the playoffs. The Chiefs have been in the Super Bowl 2 years. I could use this argument to Denver. With a first-year head coach, new quarterback. They just lost Tim Patrick as one of the receivers. I still think they could win this whole division and win the Super Bowl. They are talented enough. But this Charger team, I think talent-wise, is the most talented team in this division. They have the best number 1 receiver. They have the best number 2 receiver, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. All right.
Whoa,
You can
best
make the
number 1 and 2? Are you saying they're better than the? I don't know
I'm
about
sorry,
that, bro.
okay,
Don't disrespecting the Raiders again. Disrespecting the Raiders.
Okay, you know, I caught myself. You are correct on it.
Of course, I always got to correct you.
So here's my thing. Something that me and Joe have argued since the day he came in the league was about Herbert, right? And I was like, Joe, I'm telling you, this guy is phenomenal. You're like, but Ted, he's got to win games. I don't care if he throws for 10,000 yards and 50 touchdowns. If he loses 100 to 99, he loses the game and falls on the quarterback. Yeah. His last year season was stellar. We know that. He was 3rd in the league in touchdown passes, only behind Stafford and Tom Brady. He was 3rd in the league in QBR. He had 38 touchdowns. He was phenomenal. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the league last year. They didn't make the playoffs.
If it wasn't for the damn coach.
Here's the other reason. They got J.C. Jackson, the best cornerback in the offseason. They brought him in, all right? They have Khalil Mack, who I think will be revamped like a Von Miller, similar to what happened with the Rams. He will be ramped. It'll also be nice to be having, Joey Bosa on the other side. They also have maybe one of the best safeties in the game. Now, I know these are hold in because he is there, but he's holding out. He's not practicing, but he's there. Derwin James. He's one of the best safeties when he's healthy. Their offensive line, they have fixed those issues. Yep. They have the best running back in the division, Austin Eckler. You can at least make that argument. He's the most versatile, right?
I wouldn't disagree with that.
They have all the pieces to be great, right? Mm-hmm. There is no more excuses. It's not even about them making the playoffs, bro. They have to make a run because, like Joe said, the Chiefs have taken a step down this year, all right? Denver's new quarterback, new head coach with offense. Let's see how those first-year things. Staley's in his 2nd year. He's supposed to be the guy, you know what I mean? He goes for it in 4th downs, the defense. There is no more excuses for the Chargers. I think for this team, there's pressure. And you can make the argument for all 4 teams, right? There's pressure on Mahomes, right? You lose Tyreek Hill, you lose Tyrann Mathieu. You know, Mahomes, are you really that great, or was it the piece around you? I still think the Chiefs have all the capability of winning the division. Yeah. Absolutely. I think all 4 teams have legit. Trev, you and me have argued on the outside, not on the show. I mean, we have a little bit, but you said the Raiders probably, from quarterback to running backs to receivers to tight ends, they might have the most talent other than maybe the Cincinnati Bengals in the entire football league, in the National Football League. You can maybe make that argument with slot receivers, outside receivers. So, and maybe head coach with Josh McDaniels. But for me personally, it's Justin Herbert. I've loved this guy since he's come in the league. Other than maybe Josh Allen and Mahomes, he's probably my quarterback I take for the next 15 years. Just everything that he produces.
My argument.
Chargers, for me, they have to win. They have to get to the playoffs, and they have to make a significant impact. And you know what? We talked about it in the offseason, this AFC in general stack. You can come up with 10 teams that are possible to get to the playoffs and even win a Super Bowl.
My argument for the Chargers is I'm going to relate this to what we just talked about. I think it was either last week or this past week. I'm going to relate it to the New York Yankees. This Chargers team has all the talent in the world. I am not saying that. They got the quarterback. They have the offensive line. It's not decimated anymore. They've taken care of it. They went out and took care of their quarterback. They got Austin Eckler. They got a plethora of weapons. They have a defense now, interior defensive line as well, that their biggest issue was. Their rush defense was one of the worst in the game last year. Well, they went to go add some nice pieces to that. My biggest thing, guys, it's kind of like the Yankees. And it's because of that last game. Brandon Staley. Is it the coach that's going to screw up this team? Just like is it Aaron Boone that's going to screw up the New York Yankees? Because these teams are both so talented, but ultimately, if it's a team, it's everything. It's from top to bottom. Players got to play. And these guys are talented enough, and they're going to go out and play. But the head coach also has to do his job. And I get the aggressiveness like he has in the past last year, but also the decision-making that still can't get out of the Chargers fans and to some football fans' minds in that last game. Literally, they were there in the playoffs. They were going, will be the team to finish in first place, if not the coach. Yes, that's what I'm saying. I mean, the coach has to have some sort of pressure coming into this year. Andy Reid, he's already a Hall of Famer. He's one of the great coaches of all time. Nathaniel Hackett, first-time head coach of the Denver Broncos. We're going to see how that all pans out with him and Russell Wilson. And then Derek Carr with Josh McDaniels. He gets a second chance with Josh McDaniels, or Josh McDaniels gets his second chance. Maybe he has a whole brand new look on this whole coaching experience because when he went with Denver, it was a failed experiment. It didn't work. That's why I say, to me, the Chargers, I'm not going to say they're the team that faces the most pressure because I think they're going to do their job. It's more their coach. Deliver for them. because you got the pieces to win a damn Super Bowl. To me, guys, I'm going with the Denver Broncos because all we've been hearing for this team for the past, I don't know, 6 years. Oh, well, they don't have a quarterback. Well, they haven't had a quarterback, and I know since Peyton and Elway. Well, guess what? What's the excuse now? You have Russell Wilson. All we've been hearing about Russell Wilson, he's a top 10 quarterback. I don't have no disagreement with that. I know they lose Tim Patrick, a huge hit to that offense. I know they don't have Noah Fant because of that deal. But this team went all in. You got your quarterback now. And I know that you have to play in the toughest division in all football, but you got your quarterback now. That was the missing ingredient, the missing piece, because you have a stout defense. You have players on this offense, Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams. You got Jared Judy. You still got Cortland Sutton. You still have pieces. KJ Hamler. You have all pieces still on this team. Okay. Well, guess what? Now you got to put all those pieces together. And Nathaniel Hackett, I know he's a first-time head coach, but plus he's going from Aaron Rodgers to Russell Wilson. It's not that big of a drop-off. Aaron Rodgers is one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the league right now. Russell Wilson is what? 6 to 10 range. He's right there. So for anybody that wants to say, well, Denver doesn't have a quarterback. Well, now they have it. So they can't miss. None of these teams, you look at these off seasons, it sucks because one of these teams is going to miss the playoffs. That's the thing. And these teams,
could be too.
And that's what I'm saying. All these teams, because you got to take in consideration the AFC East still. We don't know how Miami's going to be. The AFC North with Baltimore and this whole Cleveland thing. We'll see what happens. But Pittsburgh, I know people are knocking Pittsburgh. Then you get the AFC South, maybe Tennessee. They've been in the playoffs. The Colts. I'm just saying. Now, one of these teams are going to miss the playoffs, if not 2, like just what Ted just said.
Well, Trevin, I'm saying that because
there's no more excuses for a team. There's no more excuses
like up on each other.
Yes, they're going to beat up on each other, and there's no excuses for the Denver Broncos now. You have your quarterback. You have your guy for a long time. He's going to sign an extension. They're going to pay him. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. So guess what? Denver, Chargers, and the Raiders. And I'm not going to put the Chiefs because the Chiefs have been, well, they're going on. They're trying to go for their 7th straight division title. They've won the division 6 straight, so they've been dominating this division. There's no reason to even put the Chiefs in this conversation. The only thing is,
can I ask you a question?
To me, hold on. To me, let me answer this question quick. To me, it'd be more from the standpoint of the Chiefs would be Patrick Mahomes. How much pressure is he going to face? Because now you don't have Tyreek Hill. You have a guy. You don't have that speed. You don't have that insurance policy where you could just be like, hell, where's Tyreek? Let me just throw it up, and he's just going to come out of nowhere with his cheetah speed. Everybody else, the Raiders, the Chargers, and the Broncos, the reason why your 3 teams made the moves that you did this offseason is because you're trying to chase the Kansas City Chiefs. That's what I would say about those 3 teams. And I'm glad we all talked differently. We didn't all have the same team. Ted picked the Chargers. Joe had the Raiders.
And this wasn't planned.
No, it wasn't planned. That's the thing. This was not planned. But that's the thing. All 4 of these teams have the capability of winning a Super Bowl, guys.
Here's my thing. I still think the Chiefs are making the playoffs. That's the reason why I didn't choose them. So I have the Chiefs in the playoffs. The question will be who is 2 and 3.
Let me ask you this question. I'm going to ask you both this quick thing. How many teams make the playoffs of this? We're not going to say who. How many teams? Because we'll give our preview later before the season starts.
I would say 2, but here's my thing. So, and I'll just give you a quick synopsis of what my thinking is. Bills get the number 1 seed because they have the easiest division, all right? And they're maybe the best team in the whole AFC. So they get the 1, all right? I'm thinking 1 out of the South, so that's 2. Probably maybe 2 out of the North with Cincy and Baltimore. And then you only get 2 out of the AFC West. Unless you can get that 3rd. The reason why you wouldn't get the 3rd, in my thought process would be they beat up on each other. Because there is no easy wins. Like, I'm going to assume the Bills take care of the Miami Dolphins, the Patriots, and because the Bills haven't punted in 20 straight possessions against the Patriots. As good as I think the Jets will be this season, better, I don't think they're going to beat the Bills. So I'm saying at least 2. Definitely 2, more likely than 3. But I don't know how you
Joe,
can
what do you
define
think?
it.
What do you think, Joe? How many? Like I said, the teams. We don't know. We're gonna make that prediction when we have our preview show. It's more just.
Listen, I'm prone to say 2 because 3 is gonna be tough. I do think they're gonna beat each other up, and I'll say this: I think you look around the AFC. I think you look at secondary teams in divisions like the Colts. You look at the Patriots. Maybe even a team like the Dolphins. You're talking about teams that might win 10 games, and if a team like that wins 10 or 11 games, it's going to be awfully hard to get 3 AFC West teams in there.
Guys, I don't know if I see any of these teams winning more than 11 games. I mean, the Chiefs' schedule, I was just looking. The Chiefs' schedule this year, the teams that they got to play, they got to play they got to play the Rams, they got to play the Bucs, they got to play the Bills, the Niners, Titans, Bengals, Cardinals, Indianapolis Colts. Those are all playoff / Super Bowl contenders. So the Chiefs ain't gonna have and they got the divisions. That's the thing. I can't see a team in this division winning more than 11 games. I feel like this is a 9 or 10. This is where the division's won.
Do you remember what was it? The AFC North like 2-3 years ago, where like 3 teams finished like 10-6.
Yeah,
when they had the 16. Wasn't it like that one team? It was like 11-5, and 2 teams finished 10-6.
Yeah,
something like that.
That's how I expected to be.
And I could see the other team being 9-8. Yep. The fourth team being 9-8. Because here's the thing: these teams are no slouches. They're going to beat up on the other teams too. Yep. And I don't see anyone. I see this whole division being a split. Baltimore, Denver. 3-3, 3-3. I mean, because the way I look at it is that, and it's probably a disadvantage being in such a, of course it is, because the Patriots proved that for almost 20 seasons. Being an awful division, take advantage, beat up on the weak, get the number 1 seed, and make it easy for yourself, because that's like the South. Tennessee and the Colts, I think 1 or 2 I mean, either way, I think the whole conference, I think the football season is going to be great. The AFC is going to be such a crazy division every week that I think every game in the AFC you're going to watch, more likely not, is going to be a playoff type game. You know what I mean? Because you can make an argument for the Steelers. You make depending on what happens with the Browns. I think if Watson's out for the season, I think they're going to get Jimmy G. And listen, that team is a playoff team. The Browns is a playoff team.
We'll talk about.
I know, but I'm just saying. You put Jimmy G on that team. He's been to an NFC Championship, been to a Super Bowl. He can ride that team. He's got 2 great running backs, an offensive line, receivers, weapons, defense. That team could make a lot of noise. All right. So we know what the Bengals are all about.
We're going to see what happens. We'll talk more about the divisions as the season gets closer. Next week, we'll start talking about the NFC West. We'll be talking about the AFC East and the NFC East. We're getting into football. Football has officially started after last night, after the Hall of Fame game, and we will see what happens. Bills, Patriots, Steelers. Okay, that's fine. Hey, everybody's got a prediction. I have no issue with it. That's
Patriots are definitely not making the playoffs. There's my prediction right now.
We'll see what happens. But we're just talking about greatest players of all time, and ESPN came out with their list for specific positions. Each position they ranked their greatest players. We're not going to do that. We're going to give you our top 3 players, offensive and defensive players, not quarterbacks. For all the quarterback lovers out there, this is not going to be a quarterback list. We are going to give you our top 3 players that we've seen of all time and players to us of all time, offensive players and defensive players. So, Ted, I'm going to start with you of your all-time players that you have seen offensively, and then we will get into defensively in a bit.
See, this is what's tough because I've seen Jerry Rice play. So I saw Jerry Rice. I feel like Jerry Rice has to be in this conversation because I was alive enough to see Jerry Rice play. But if I was doing like post 1998, right, from like 98 to like now, and I cut Jerry Rice out, and I can kind of cut Barry out because Jerry Rice and Barry Sanders, I saw them both play. So those will automatically in. But if I can cut those 2 out, just put those on exempt right now, it would be with Danian Tomlinson, it would be Randy Moss, and it would be Adrian Peterson.
So those are the 3 that you would say. LT was your number 1. So LT's the greatest football
player.
It's not a
ranking. I have no rankings. I have no preference.
Okay, that's all right. All right. Yeah, fair enough. Okay. And Joe, how about you? Now remember, Joe, I hate to do this to you, but you are a little older than us. So you might be seeing some players that we didn't get to see, especially me,
Old Night Train Lane. Yeah, relax. Yeah, you'll know everybody on my to me, Barry Sanders, 2-time offensive player of the year, a 2,000-yard guy, a rookie of the year, an MVP, just one of the greats of all time. And Teddy, I know you watched this guy play when you were a tyke.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that. Listen, I have the Barry Sanders jersey. He was my favorite running back, Joey, growing up. And the reason why I loved him, and I was a Giant fan. Well, first of all, the Giants didn't really, Ronnie Hampton, but the Giants were bad when I was growing up. It was just Barry Sanders. It was and the way I was raised was his etiquette because I actually did like Emmitt Smith. And then the helmet thing when he took the helmet off at Giant Stadium, I think it was like Monday Night Football, and that became the Emmitt Smith rule where you're not supposed to take your helmet off in the end zone. Just rubbed me the wrong way, and that's another reason why I can't stand Dallas, because just the Movado and that BS crap of him. But
Joe, who else would be your top three? Who else?
Number 2 on my list happens to be the man who caused the Emmitt Smith rule. Emmitt Smith, the all-time leading rusher, also leads the league in touchdowns. He's the only running back ever to win Super Bowl championship MVP, the Russian crowd, and the Super Bowl MVP. Super Bowl MVP in the same year. You could also say this guy was the product of longevity, but anytime Emmitt Smith was on the field, whatever side he was on, that was a better team. And the guy always seemed to come up big in big games, and that's a perfect example. And the third guy is somebody who I got to watch when I was younger, and I watched him in a Super Bowl, and to this day, it pisses me off that William the Refrigerator Perry scored a touchdown in unbelievable. Walter Payton, one of the greats of all time, 1977 MVP twice. He was the Offensive Player of the Year, 77 and in 85. He was a beast. I'm not old enough to know Jim Brown. I imagine Jim Brown was a lot like Walter Payton, where you had amazing finesse and speed, or he could just lower his shoulder and barrel you over and then do a spin move and then break it off and outrun you down the sideline.
Kind of like Adrian
Peterson.
Was
phenomenal.
Yeah. For me personally, because I'm younger than you guys, I'm going to go with Ted. I would agree with you. I think LT has got to be right there. I'm surprised, Joe, you didn't have no receivers either, because you're
I thought about it. Jerry Rice would be on my list. And I'll be honest, if I were to have picked anybody from the last 20 years, LaDainian Tomlinson, he's probably my number 4 guy if I was to really stretch this list out. I thought he was spectacular. And I liked on him too. He brought really the pass catching element you hadn't seen outside of Roger Craig and Ricky Waters in San Francisco. Otherwise, nobody ever threw the running backs in. I like, he kind of revolutionized the change over to a passing league and a running back that could catch.
Actually, you know what? Right before him, it's funny we don't say Marshall Faulk, bro.
Marshall.
You forget because of the whole show, the whole greatest show.
You forget about that, but he was their best player on that team. Because he was one of the first, I think, other than Roger Craig, he was the next running back ever to have 1,000 yards rushing, 1,000 yards receiving. That 2,000 yards. He was phenomenal. But
and for me personally, and then we'll get into the top 3 offensive players of all time in the history of the game of football. So for people that are watching, I don't want people to get confused. Me personally would be LT. I got to go with Calvin Johnson. I think Calvin Johnson was magnificent, getting double teamed, having a corner, having the in the box safety, double teaming him at the goal line. Also just jumping over 3 defenders. Matthew Stafford, literally the definition of screw it. Calvin's there. I'll just throw it up. He'll catch it. And he was just so good, just like Barry, on just an awful, awful franchise and still a terrible franchise in the Detroit Lions. I'm sorry, Lions fans, but Calvin Johnson, my God, 3 all-time greats pretty much wasted their careers being drafted by the Detroit Lions. And for me, my third one would probably have to be Randy Moss. I mean, Randy Moss, even though Randy Moss was not my ideal type of receiver, I mean, the man was incredible. I mean, he just had lightning speed. It was,
the game against Dallas,
how
3 catches for 160 yards and 3 touchdowns.
The famous Dallas game, 3 catches, 163 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, he had lightning speed. He still has the day of the greatest receiving season statistical wise. With that New England Patriot team. And then just seeing him do what he did in college as well, and how he fell that far because of some situations. I mean, teams are scratching their head and biting their fist that they're like, why did we pass up on a talent like him? Those would be my 3 talents. I know I had 2 receivers over running backs, but to me, Adrian Peterson, Joe, you said it, Adrian Peterson would be like right on the brink for me. Now let's get into the all-time players. Ted, who would be your 3 offensive players of all time?
We had quarterbacks.
No quarterbacks. Because
quarterbacks. I told you, my number 1 receiver of all time is Jerry Rice. I agreed with the ESPN thing. All right. For me personally, they had Jim Brown at number 1. My number 1 running back would be Barry Sanders. There was no one better than him. He was the only guy that could go back 5 yards and get 15. All right. He made the playoffs one time. It was against Dallas, and Dallas was loaded. and he still had a good game. He had no team around him. I mean, it took a couple years. He got Herman Moore, he got Justin Morton, he got Scott Mitchell, but they were garbage. I mean, the Lions have been garbage forever. I can't remember ever when the Lions, in my 35 years of history, that I always said, and people make the joke, and you can't play the what if, like, hey, if Derek Jeter played on the Royals, would we know who Derek Jeter is? If Barry played on Dallas and you switched Emmitt Smith, would Emmitt Smith even have 10,000 yards? Barry Sanders would probably have 25,000 yards. He'd have like 5 2,000-yard seasons. And Barry kind of quit early too. So who even knows what Barry's numbers would have been if he played 2-3 years longer? You know what I mean? And that was a shock. But then now it's common knowledge that guys, they hit 30, 31. They're like, I'm out the door. I'm good. But Barry Sanders, Jerry Rice, and then now you're talking a flip of a coin. I mean, I'll go. I don't even know. I got like 20 names running through my head right now.
Pick one right off the bat, just bam. What would you say?
Well, if I had to do a team, I'd go Randy Moss, Jerry Rice, and I put Barry Sanders in the back.
I just need one person.
I just said it.
I don't need a pick. Who was it?
I said there's my 3 starting. There's Jerry Rice on the left wing, Randy Moss on the right wing, Barry Sanders is my running back. There you go. There's my 3.
So there's your 3 greatest offensive players of all time. Okay, Joe, how about you, buddy?
I'd have Barry standing behind me, and I would be flanked by Jerry Rice and Calvin Johnson. That's my 3. That's I'm the quarterback. That's who I want to be getting the ball to.
Wow, interesting. Me personally, I gotta go. I mean, Jerry Rice has to be the greatest offensive player of all time. And his stats are just ridiculous. Leads in reception. Who cares? Whatever. That's longevity. Good for him. Even better. That's another strength that he can use to his advantage.
Well, there's longevity where you're making 30 catches and 380 yards for like your last 4 or 5 seasons. And then there's a guy
he didn't even need to have that stuff because he's already the all-time leader in receptions, yards, touchdowns, yards from scrimmage. I mean, every major category that you need as a receiver, Jerry Rice is at the top. Me, top 3, and then Barry Sanders got to be Barry Sanders. I'm playing on a bad team. I'm going with Jim Brown. I think Jim Brown, he retired at 29. We all talk about Barry retiring early. Jim Brown retired at 29. All he did was just win 3 MVPs, went to the Pro Bowl every season, led the league in rushing 8 of the 9 seasons, and he had All-Pro 8 straight seasons. So anything that Jim Brown did and he played for the Cleveland Browns too. So, you got to give him a little
Cleveland Browns were good back in the day, bro.
Yeah. Well, so my other thought is too, I don't think anybody thought to put a big, strong, fast, best player on the field as that position until
he was
Brown
built like a linebacker. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
Like stronger and faster than everyone else. He was ahead of his time. I mean, there's a lacrosse rule with Jim Brown because you have to cradle the ball because what he used to do is take the stick with the ball and hold it against his chest and just run down the field and no one could get it out. They changed that rule when he was at Syracuse. So, I mean, think about it. He was like 6'2", 220, 230 in 1960? He was probably the size of some of the guards, bro. Yeah. So, but he was phenomenal too. He was so dominant.
It's like, listen, it's like saying Wilt Chamberlain is the greatest basketball player of all time. Well, of course he was, because no one had ever seen it. Same with Babe Ruth. You had a guy who hit more home runs than all the other teams, and it's like, yeah, that guy's the best. Like, it's a no-brainer, but right, as the rest of the sport catches up, everybody's Babe Ruth now. You have Jim Brown on, 13 different teams at this point.
I don't know if you got a Jim Brown on third. Maybe Derrick Henry is the one exception, but other than that, it's Joe. They're more like
but into the 70s, 80s, and 90s, that became the prototypical running back. You've got guys like Peyton. You've got guys like Adrian Peters. You got those big bruising, really fast, really strong Jerome Bettis. Jerome Bettis would not have existed if the Cleveland Browns were like, hey, give the ball to old Jim Brown here. And that's what happened.
Now you're having, and like you said, they have more guys nowadays in the NFL that are like LT. And like you said, he kind of revolutionized the game because of the pass catching ability of running backs. Now their value as a pass catcher is more valuable than being just a basic running back.
It's amazing that when Roger Craig became a 1,000-yard receiver out of the backfield in San Francisco, that Teddy, it took a long time for other teams to be like, we should try that.
Yeah.
So they got any running backs that could catch? Because it's a good idea. Like, nobody did it for a long time. Do you know who the third
guy is? Do you know who the other guy is? So Marshall Faulk's the other one. Do you know who the third guy is? Of all time? with 1,000 yards, 1,000 receiving yards.
Tomlinson.
Nope. It just happened.
Christian McCaffrey. A couple years ago.
Like 2 years ago. Wasn't LT. Wasn't
no, he never got 1,000 yards.
It was
and I was thinking of a couple other guys, but no, they never got to 1,000 yards for a running back is a lot of
receiving yards. That's crazy.
Tiki had some serious receiving yards.
But to have 1,000 as a running back, that's a receiver.
Edgerrin James had a bunch of receiving yards.
Your offense has to either be extraordinarily great or it's lacking any other actual pass
he's
catchers.
Everything for you. Exactly.
Let's get on to the other side of the ball where, well, as we like to say it, offense likes to bring out the highlights and the cash, but defense ultimately wins the championships. I know Ted might think differently on that, but let's get into this one. Top 3 players of all time that we've seen on the TV live.
Did we do the top 3 defensive players recently of our generation?
No.
We didn't do that. We did the offense.
So what would be our what's that? We just did it 2 seconds ago. We're not. Ted's already losing his mind. He's got short-term. I heard he's got short-term memory loss, I think.
Yeah, well, that's what happens at work. I just learned this in the thing that when you do a job where you continually put information in and process it quick and get on to the next thing, it affects your short-term memory because you're so used to putting things in and going on to the next thing.
Well, looks like you have an example of short-term memory loss then.
Yeah, Lawrence Taylor, Reggie White, Deion Sanders.
You've seen all those guys. That's lucky.
Of course
that's lucky. You guys are lucky. You guys are those. So is
that? No. You said players of all time. You didn't say in my generation.
I said that we've seen.
I thought we were going
just like the offense. What we just did. We'll get
you wrote on this thing. You wrote all time. You did not write during our.
Yeah. Did you also see this question too? That's what I did. Same thing, and we answered both.
Okay. The best defensive players I've seen is Aaron Donald, Ray Lewis, Troy Polamalu. With an Ed Reed right there as like a 3B.
Wow, you took Polamalu over Ed Reed. Surprised.
Listen, you're flipping a coin, bro. Like Ed Reed is the best free safety maybe of all time. Troy Polamalu, other than Ronnie Lott, I mean, the man was diving over at goal lines, grabbing quarterbacks, making plays with left hands, right hand. He was like a linebacker playing safety, playing corner. He was everything. The whole defense was him. I mean, and when I say that with respect, that Steelers defense, but he didn't have a position, Troy Polamalu. He did what he wanted because he was that smart. He'd play inside, outside, he blitz, sack. I mean, he was phenomenal. Ray Lewis, best linebacker I've seen in my time. Best linebacker. Smart. I mean, you listen to Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. Those guys spent hours just on Ray Lewis because he was the smartest guy on the field other than those 2 guys. And then Aaron Donald, I mean, honestly, I mean, you can make J.J. Watt, but Aaron Donald, I mean, honestly, he's just tearing people up left and right. He's like 6'1". He just, get out of my way, neck you over, push this guy over. I mean, the guy is literally could win defensive player every year. I mean, he's phenomenal. I mean, literally, we saw it this year. There's no one like him, at least that I've seen. So those are my 3: Ray Lewis, Aaron Donald. I mean, I saw Deion too, but that's why I saw Deion in the last. Deion was phenomenal too. Jesus.
We'll talk about that in a sec. Joe, how about you? Who would you pick?
This list was very easy for me. I felt bad that I couldn't get Bruce Smith on it, but I was able to wedge in Derek Thomas, 9 Pro Bowls, 3 All-Pro teams. He was 9th all-time in sacks when he died. He's now 17th on the list. He's still the Chiefs' all-time leader in sacks, safeties, forced fumble recoveries, and defensive touchdowns all these years later. Number 2 on my list, Reggie White, 2-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year, 13-time Pro Bowler, 13 All-Pro selections, 2nd all-time on the NFL sack list with 198 behind Bruce Smith. Guy was just, and again, being a Giants fan, you saw a lot of that guy and you hated his guts. And easily at the top of the list, Lawrence Taylor.
I'm about to say, you don't have.
I was messing with y'all. Yeah, come on. 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, 10-time All-Pro, 10-time Pro Bowler, 2-time Super Bowl champion, and one of the greatest of all time. Again, these were 3.
Oh no, we lost him. He froze.
You were watching, and whatever game they were in. He was the best player on the field, and it wasn't even close.
He redefined the defensive pass rushing position. He redefined what offenses need to do because the left tackle then became one of the most significant spots other than the quarterback in the game of football. His 9.5 sacks his rookie season do not count toward his 132.5, which should count. But they should go back and okay, those count. Like we were idiots that we didn't count like home runs before, or we didn't count threes. Well, there was no 3-point line, but did you see? Joe, I was looking at. Did you see his rookie season? 1981, 133 tackles, 9.5 sacks, 8 knockdowns, 2 fumbles, interception, won the league's defensive player of the year as a rookie. Are you kidding me?
Go look at his MVP season. They also won the Super Bowl.
86 is phenomenal. He had 75 sacks in 5 years during 86 to 89.
At 20 and a half that year.
Just a guy who again, all three of these guys, I mean, all the attention every time the other team snapped the ball, like the camera was really looking for these guys. Yeah. And you would see these guys doing something inside, outside, coming around the edge. And they disrupted every single play when they were on the field. Something phenomenal. And there's some great guys now, but again, I see some of these great players now, and I see Aaron Donald, and I think he reminds me a little bit of Reggie White. A little bit.
He's Aaron Donald is freaking fascinating. I mean,
he's amazing.
He really is.
Joe, where would you, if you were doing 5, where would Deion and Ronnie Lott be? Would those be in your top 5?
Deion would be my number 4 guy. And
do you have Ronnie Lott as your best safety?
Yeah. Although you've made a compelling argument today for Troy Polamalu. I have to think on him a little bit. Because for me, it's always like a no-brainer, Ronnie Lott. But the more I think about Polamalu, the more I'm like, he could have slid in there. But definitely Deion, as far as my secondary, that's exactly where I would start.
That would be my number 1 cornerback. I mean, if I was starting deep safety, it'd be Ed Reed. Deion, my pass rusher would be Lawrence Taylor. My D tackle would be Aaron Donald.
So for me personally, my 3 best players that I've ever seen would be Aaron Donald's got to be up there. I mean, Aaron Donald's he's going to retire now and he'd be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, he's every year he's getting double, triple teamed by offensive linemen, offensive game plans. Whoever 99 is, unless you're Urban Meyer, who didn't know who 99 was last year. I don't know if you guys remember that, but Urban Meyer said, "Who's this 99 guy for the Rams?"
That had to be a joke.
No.
If he was that obnoxious and that's stupid, then there's
Ted. I would believe it because this is the same guy. Ted, this is the same coach that didn't take the flight home after the game in Cincinnati.
He had to take a pit stop, bro.
Yeah, pit stop, more like a. Never mind, we ain't getting into that. But that's just that. He get into some type. But he didn't. Unless you're Urban Meyer, your offensive game plans revolve around where the hell is 99. Let's stay away from him. I mean, he dictated the last drive of the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl. Why they eventually won both of those games. He disrupted it all. I would say J.J. Watt too. I mean, J.J. Watt's got to be in for me. And I'm a defensive end, so I love the edge rushers. J.J. Watt was just so dominant. I know he had the injuries, and I get that, but he was a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, and he was playing offense. He did everything for that Texans franchise. When we think of the Houston Texans, the first name that comes to mind for me will always be J.J. Watt, and he's just a great human being as well.
Who's your second guy from the Texans?
It's going to be Deshaun Watson for me.
I would say no.
I would reasons.
No. For me, I would still say probably I would say DeAndre Hopkins when I think of the Houston Texans.
I would say Andre Johnson.
Oh, Andre Johnson too. Yes, I forgot. Yeah, Andre Johnson too. Andre Johnson, great call. And
then
my last one,
then Arian Foster.
Yeah, Arian Foster. My last was probably in between the. It was a combination of 3 guys, either Ed Reed, Troy Polamalu, or Ray Lewis. But I'm gonna go with Ray Lewis just because I'm a huge Ray Lewis fan. I love his enthusiasm. To see him, other than beating the New York Giants in Super Bowl 34. I mean, that guy just dominated. I mean, it literally scared the bejesus out of Kerry Collins and the New York Giants team that Super Bowl. I mean, he did everything for that Baltimore Ravens franchise. Him and Ed Reed, Troy Polamalu, fascinating players. My 3 players of all time, though, I mean, LT to me, I don't care if it's biased. I don't really care. He's the greatest football player to me in the history of the game. I'll take him over anybody, even over the great Tom Brady. I'm taking Lawrence Taylor, to me, the greatest football player of all time. Reggie White, I mean, he was an unstoppable force. He was an unstoppable force. You could not do anything about him. Whether it was on the Philadelphia Eagles or the Green Bay Packers, wherever 98 was, you had to figure it out. Speaking of that, I'm gonna go with Aaron Donald. I think if Aaron Donald has another dominant year, I think I would take him over Dion. I would take him over Ronnie Lott, Ray Lewis. I mean, the man has, ever since he's come into the league, all we talking about is Aaron Donald. In the past 4 or 5 years, we've been saying, well, who's the best player in football? Aaron Donald. He's been dominating, and in a quarterbacks-driven league, we always say that 99 is still the best player in football.
You know how you know he's the best football player? Go look at the Madden ratings. He's been 99 for the last.
And he's usually in the top 2 or 3 for NFL top 100 in the past couple of years. I mean,
and that's voted on by his colleagues.
He's just that damn good. Top 3 players of all time, Ted. Defense.
Trev's 1, Trev's 2, Trev's 3.
You picked Aaron Donald too? I thought you said Dion.
I did, yeah, I was going to go with the 3. I did go with the 3 because of their impact. Listen, I mean, I think Aaron Donald's domination, and I want to see where, I know it's hard to put a guy in the all-time greatest when his career is not even finished yet.
Hey, we do it for quarterbacks.
I look at the way the game is played now, right? And where it's spread offense, it's quickness. He dominate. Here's the thing. I always say greatness. When you rank players for positions, here's the best third baseman, here's the second best third baseman, right? So when you talk pass rushers, you're like, TJ Watt and Myles Garrett, they're like right there. They're close by. There's Aaron Donald, and then the separation between him and the next best D tackle in the league is like down the street, through the river, and through the woods, and over grandma's house. There's not even a close number.
Cameron Hayward, Fletcher, those guys.
Cameron Hayward.
Cameron Hayward.
Not even in the same boat, kid.
You're knocking Cameron Hayward. You're disrespecting Cameron Hayward.
Dude, he's not in the same story as Aaron Donald.
Go look at
as a D tackle?
Go look at his. Okay.
Stop. Okay. I don't want to. Aaron Donald's. Reggie White had double-digit sacks 13 of his 15 years of his career. Was a phenomenal. That right-handed hook where you just take the guy. I mean, go look at the highlight. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look at the highlight with Reggie White versus the best guard of all time, Larry Allen. And he takes Larry Allen and goes, whoop! And Larry Allen was the NFL's strongest player for like 5 years in a row when he put like 225 up for like 48 reps. And he was just like this. He took Larry Allen and threw him like Dad would throw me when I was 5 years old. Whoop! See you later. Out the door. And then Lawrence Taylor. I mean, it's phenomenal. You can have the argument of Ray Lewis. Listen, if you wanted me to give you my 5 things, Deion Sanders is my best cornerback, right? My base safety. I didn't see Ronnie Lott, so it's Ed Reed.
Who would you say? Who would you say, Joe?
Well, I think you can't forget about Deacon Jones, who had 676 sacks when they weren't counting them. I'm kidding. It's only like 173, but he's got the record for most 15 sack seasons. He's got the record for most 20 sack seasons. If those were all to have been counted, he led the league in 65, 67, 68, 69, and 71. He was as dominant. Again, when you think about Jim Brown on the offensive side, what Deacon Jones was doing on the defensive side was scary. He's mean dude.
I'm glad you said mean, because Mean Joe Green, I mean, he was the defensive player of the year. He's got 4 Super Bowls. He was the catalyst for that Pittsburgh Steelers 4 Super Bowls during the 70s. The man was in a Coca-Cola commercial. Is that Mean Joe Green? Yeah, I mean, listen, other than Terry Bradshaw, I feel like Mean Joe Green is like the most famous guy on that 70s team. I mean, you can say Stallworth and some of the other guys, but I feel like Mean Joe Green just stands out and sets the tone for the rest of. I mean, it's all arbitrary. We can argue for days. I saw Obi's and I didn't put his up, but I mean, he had Bruce Smith in there. I think he's the all-time leading sack leader. Yes, phenomenal career. Yeah. I mean, I remember him going against the Giants talking about. I mean, there's so many great players, and that's what makes this fun and these debates so interesting, because it's all your perspective and how you see things, how you rank things. You know, for me, I think impacting the game both on the run game and rushing the passer has a bigger effect than just being Deion and shutting down a wide receiver when half the players are not always passing. And I think Deion would have more an impact now, where the game is so much more passing, than it did when he was the 90s, where it was run, pass, and you could all, here's the other thing, you also could be more physical then too, where today's game, the rules and things dictate different rules.
Guys like Deion would flourish more. Guys like LT or like, oh my God, Deacon Jones, just example of that, Reggie White, guys like that, I feel like they would be they would be the ones that would get kind of on.
Well, they would still dominate just the way they hit.
Still dominate, but they'd be on the wrong side of it because of all the flags and how quarterback happy it's been, helping out these quarterbacks not get hurt. With guys like that, it would help out a guy like you just said, Ted. Definitely Dion, and that's also I was just thinking about. That's why Jerry Rice maybe could be the greatest football player of all time because he dominated when it wasn't a throwing lead. That's why Dan Marino. That's why also Dan Marino. I mean, Dan Marino gets almost as great credit as they all talk about Aaron Rodgers and stuff because he was dominating in an era.
Here's probably the biggest factor to your argument that you should make. Receivers didn't go across the middle. I mean, they did, but you usually didn't have your head on when you went across to the next hash mark. See, today, you can't hit a guy high. You can't hit him hard. You can't bump him. Just like in basketball, there's different rules. Guys are not afraid to go across the middle anymore. If you went across the middle in the 80s, I mean, I think about that giant that linebackers with Gary Reason and Carl Banks and Peppers. And, I mean, and Ronnie Watt. Are you kidding me? No. I mean, don't worry, amputate the finger. Let's go. Wipe your head off. Destroy you. Kill you.
I can't imagine if Lawrence Taylor and Reggie White and Bruce Smith and Derek Thomas had an opportunity to play in a league where you're throwing about 70% of the time. Don't forget, they played in leagues that were very run heavy. Like you said, run, pass. Imagine if LT could just tee off 3 times in a row knowing the other team was throwing. Holy smokes, would that have been something else.
And here's the other thing. Now you get guys, and let's be honest, we love football now. Football in general is a better game than it was before. Mm-hmm. But the skill of the linemen are not as good. And when I say that is, these guys come in quick. Like Eric Flowers could be your left tackle. Like imagine Lawrence Taylor against Eric Flowers. You know what I mean? Like think about some of the tackles and the people that they go against now. They're not as redefined in their craft as some of the guys, because those guys back in the day played 4 years of college. Guys are out 2 years. You know what I mean? We got to get guys in. We're getting younger talent. Back in the day, you're playing against guys that are veterans, Bruce Matthews, guys that had longevity, better skill. Maybe the guys are bigger and faster now, but their skill level is not as fine-tuned as it might have been back in the day. And I'm saying, I think about some of the tackles now, right? We think about the Giants, right? Imagine if Lawrence Taylor playing against the Giants against some of the Daniel Jones wouldn't make the first drive. He'd be sacked 3 plays. Lawrence Taylor would run right through some of those offensive linemen. You know what I mean? Think about the Bengals. I mean, the whole line would have to shift to Lawrence Taylor. It'd be shift left. I mean, it would be double tight end all game long. So, that's another which makes these guys so incredible at where they are at.
Well, what do you think, to all of our followers, who do you think is the greatest defensive player of all time? What about the offensive player of all time? Non-quarterbacks, what do you guys think? Who's the greatest players you've ever seen? And what about the AFC West? Who do you think is the team? Maybe, is it the Chiefs? Is it the possible Chiefs? I don't think it should be the Chiefs, but how about the Broncos, the Chargers, the Raiders? You can check us out at Keys to the City and on all social media platforms at Keys to the City, as well as Clovercrest Media. I'm your host, Trevor Keys, alongside Ted Keys and Joseph Guaya. We'll see you next episode. We're out.
You are now in tune to the Keys to the City podcast.